3 months off. Welcome, everyone. Thirsty Thursday number 31. We're back. We've had our summer hiatus coming into the spring or into the fall. And we're going to go ahead and kick this series back off tonight. No real topic, no real direction of where we're going. So if you guys have questions, comments, something you want us to talk about, put it in the comments below. Otherwise, sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, because that's what we're going to do. First off, as always, cheers, brothers. Good to see you. Bobby, is that Hawaiian Punch?
Yeah, something. Mio. It's exciting Mio. I just got back.
So to get us kicked off, we'll go around the horn here, just again to kind of introduce everybody and refresh ourselves. Ben Waples, a volunteer firefighter captain in Salisbury, Maryland, and a firefighter paramedic for the town of Ocean City. Bobby.
Hey, everybody. Bobby McGee, Lieutenant Ocean City Fire Department. Been a great summer. It's been great to see everybody out, not have the big lockdowns going on. So it's been very enjoyable. We've been very busy, but it's been good. We are just like everyone else. We're extremely hard up for help. So we even hired Ben. We'll see how that all goes. And he's on my shift, Trevor. Yeah. So, but anyway, welcome everybody. And is that what it was? Oh, you're welcome. I thought you should apologize or something like that. But anyway, so welcome everybody. It's good to see you, and welcome Scott. And I'm gonna pass it off to Trevor.
Captain in Salisbury, Maryland.
Awesome, Bobby. I appreciate it. Everybody, Trevor Steedman here. I used to work with the two miscreants on the upper left-hand side of the screen there with Bobby and Ben. And worked with them for quite a few decades, actually, and then had to move down here to Florida and take a job. So I'm still on the job with a smaller department down here in South Florida and enjoying life. And for those of you who have viewed these episodes before, welcome back. It's good to see everybody. Hope you had a great summer. And if you're new joining us tonight, you're going to find out we've got a lot of great topics coming up over the next couple of months. And sometimes we have the show about absolutely nothing, where we just kind of kick around a tailboard or a kitchen table conversation. And other times we'll have very specific topics with the guests that will come on and share some good training and some good nuggets with us. So with that, I want to introduce our guest tonight, who's going to be talking about nothing and everything with us tonight as well. Scott Smith, buddy of mine from Colorado, who I've known for many, many, many years. And we wanted to bring him on. We're actually going to have him on in some future episodes as well. But we figured this would be a great opportunity to kind of bring in some other people from around the country as we get ready to celebrate Labor Day weekend. And, of course, some things we'll talk about tonight, the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001 coming up. And also some other recent events going on with hurricanes and other major events going on around the country. So with that, Scott, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell these wonderful people who you are and how wonderful you are, because you're mine.
I don't know about that, but hi, everybody. I'm Scott Smith. I'm a lieutenant paramedic with Cimarron Hills Fire Department out here on the outskirts of Colorado Springs. I started out back east, not real far from Trevor, over in Prospect Park, Pennsylvania. So was a volunteer back there, and then decided to move out to Colorado and kind of have a backdrop like I've got going here. So as Trevor said, I've known him probably longer than either one of us wants to admit. We've been running around for a while, so hopefully we'll have a good conversation tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Scott, for joining us.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
Absolutely. One of the first things to kind of kick things off, it is 9 days away, but the 20th anniversary of September 11th. It's hard to believe that it's been 20 years ago that tragic day happened, but now we're coming up on the 20th anniversary. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I know Ocean City, we've got some stuff planned coming up to celebrate that. Trevor has mentioned in the pre-show that they're doing something for the 11th. So let's talk a little bit about what we got going on for that, and kind of how we're going to commemorate that day. Bobby and I were on shift that day. We worked, so this will be my first day or first year, as a career fireman. on shift, and I imagine that's going to be a little bit different than it has in the past for me. So, Trevor, what do you guys have going on? I know you mentioned you got something, some ceremony down in your town.
Well, we do, Ben. Actually, there's a lot of different ceremonies that go on, and our county fire rescue, they do a really nice job with the resources that they have. And every year they do a remembrance ceremony. And this year, of course, being the 20th anniversary of that day, I'm sure they've put just as much, if not more, into it. And in the community that I work in, we decided not too long ago to have our own, and not to take anything away from any of the other ceremonies, but just to really bring together the people of that community, because each one of them has certainly a background and a memory of things. And as one of the people who's going to present or speak, and it's going to be brief if you can believe it or not, is I was reflecting on it, of course, with the 20th year coming up, and everyone has their "where were you" story. And I recall where I was, obviously working in Ocean City at that time, and just a little bit of the disbelief in how things changed, very rapidly and kind of surreally in a very short period of time. So with that being said, I look at a lot of people who are in the fire service today, and we have our slogans about never forget. We just had a new T-shirt made in my department, and we literally had some of the younger folks say, "Hey, what's that 343 thing on the shirt?" And it's incumbent upon us. I have members in the fire service who were born in 2001. Or to me, to some of you, we lived through it, but to other people, these things are a historical footnote. Not that it minimizes it in their mind. I mean, they're not disrespectful of it, but it's not tangible to them as it is for us, because we've lived through it. And I just remember it was a Tuesday, beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky, very picturesque blue sky, probably the bluest I've ever seen, and being 105 feet up in the air on a ladder truck during a Tuesday shift training day at the convention center parking lot, and seeing a police car come in, not really sideways, but in a hurry, and motioning for me to come down off the top of the ladder. And it was one of your Delawareans there, Bobby. It was Brazier Lynch. And he goes, "Hey," he said, "did you hear a plane just hit the World Trade Center?" I'm like, "Oh, really? No crap, huh?" Because you figured it's a Cessna, or you just didn't have the concept of what was going on. And not long after that, the phone starts ringing, and the message of "gather your crew, get your ass to headquarters as quick as you can. I'll explain when you get here," was the next thing. So, we got people whose schools are shutting down. We don't know what's going on, and 4 hours to our north is a tower that's been hit by a jet. And then we get to headquarters, and of course we have the TV on, and the bosses are coming in, and we're trying to gather information and getting some things from 65th Street, and we literally watch the second plane hit on TV and go, "Oh," then it starts to register, and then 2.5 hours to our west, where the Pentagon gets hit, and then not what, probably geographically, I'm not sure, probably about 3.5 hours northwest of us is where Flight 93 goes down in the field. And then we're hearing all these reports, and very, very surreal to go by our Coast Guard station in Ocean City, which was not fenced at the time, which was just kind of an open air building or open access building. And to see all the Coast Guardsmen and women lining the front of the building with ballistic vests, Kevlar helmets, and M16s at high port. And you're like, wow, something is just very, very different today. So I think it changed all of us to a degree, but I think it's also incumbent on all of us, especially for us living through it, is to make sure that we pass those lessons down of never forget and why it's tangible. And our colleagues, and of course, we have stories that can go on, but our colleagues that we lost that day, some of us had trained with those folks, or they were friends of ours in the different places. And then certainly notwithstanding all the folks since then who have died related to that incident, not only civilians, but all first responders from various cancers, from suicides, from everything. So that incident kind of still plays on even today. So for those firefighters that are the younger generations, when we talk about 9/11 and we tell them what the significance of those numbers are on that T-shirt, or when we say never forget, we put faces and names to it and why it's important. And just kind of going back a little bit on that as well, because I want to kind of pitch this to Bobby with a question, is to me, it's very similar to what maybe those generations in World War II during the attack at Pearl Harbor. That's not tangible to me. It's a historical footnote, which I think is a very important one. And the history is there. We respect that history. We look at the number of lives lost of our American sailors and servicemen from that point forward. And to me, again, I kind of look at this the same way, that for our generation, this would be similar to what that generation maybe had experienced. And it's our obligation to actually speak and go forward with it and give them a little bit of that history lesson as to why it's important to really keep that alive. And I think we're doing a nice job with it, but we also have to realize that we're aging. And again, there's people who, when I read their applications, they were born in the year 2000. And it's like, wow, they have no concept of what this was other than footage. So with that, I think it's also important to look at our brothers and sisters in law enforcement, but also in the military, because as you all kind of remember that iconic picture, it was, I believe it was a cartoon that was drawn in one of the publications, but it was of a firefighter taking the American flag up out of the rubble of the World Trade Center and handing it off to a member of our military. And you could tell they were in forward motion to go fight terrorism overseas. And Bobby, as a veteran yourself, and spending time overseas, probably during some of that pre and post or a pre-time, and being able to serve in some of those areas, I think it's important that we remember some of the sacrifices that our military has had to make all over the world on that behalf. So, Bobby, if you don't mind, because I know for those of you who have tuned in before and viewed, a lot of Bobby's background and in the fire service came from his service in the Navy. And again, Bobby, thank you for your service and what you've done for us. Could you just talk a little bit about how that kind of affected you, not only as a firefighter but as a veteran who served overseas?
Yeah, I served in the Navy. My first tour of duty was in Beirut, Lebanon. And the group that relieved us was involved in a barracks bombing, which killed over 400 of our members. And so that was the footnote that got me into the VFW and all that stuff. These guys are going overseas. What's unique, I think, compared to what I was in a relatively peacetime era. I was in between Vietnam and the Gulf War. And there were guys that served with me that were in Vietnam, and they told me all the horror stories about what had happened then. And Beirut was very unique. We weren't truly involved in the fighting over there. We were very close to it, and it was happening all around us, but it wasn't people shooting at us, I guess you could say. And the interesting thing about the military is next year we're going to have people retiring from the military that joined because of September 11th. And so, first of all, I raise my glass, because there's nothing more noble in this country than having something like that happen and saying, you know what, I'm going to make a difference overseas, away from my homeland, in scary places. And those guys signed up in droves, and God bless all those guys, for what they did afterwards, because I think they had very similar stories to my friends at Vietnam that had stories like that. So my memory was I was working at Station 4 in Ocean City on September 11th. Ocean City had just been voted the All-American City. You remember that, Trevor? And they had banners and flags all over the town. And I think this happened like weeks before this, did it, Trevor? I think it was very soon before that. And they go around and they vote different cities in every year. We just happened to be the city that year. And I remember, just like you did, Trevor, I remember they said an airplane crashed into the World Trade Center. I thought it was a small plane. I looked and you could see the footprint on the building. I said, my God, that's a huge plane. And we were talking about the fire tactics. I mean, that's mostly what we were doing, was talking about, gosh, this has got to messed up the the elevators. It's got to have messed up the standpipe systems, all the things that you would talk about as kind of like a firefighter. And I'll be honest with you, when the second plane hit, I was stunned. I couldn't say anything. And for those guys who are young that weren't around then, it didn't register right away for me. It was a period of time where I couldn't believe what I had just seen. And it took me a while to kind of register. And it was like soon after that, the Pentagon got hit, but it was very sketchy. They wouldn't say the Pentagon got hit. They just said a plane went down in D.C. At some point, they were saying that they thought there were 14 missing planes going around at the time, or some crazy number like that. And we truly didn't know what was going on back then. But now, in retrospect, 20 years later, I think they were line of duty deaths. They were firemen doing fireman things. The building was on fire. They were doing their best to stretch their lines. They were doing their best to rescue the people out of those buildings. Father Judd was doing his best to comfort the troops when he died in the line of duty. And they were all line of duty deaths. We just had a line of duty death here in Frederick not too long ago here in Maryland. And I think it's the same. I think it was just so many of them. It was overwhelming for us. 343 firefighters going in a hand, and seeing it on TV and watching those buildings. And for you young guys, they didn't think those buildings were going to fall. The engineers can say what they want to say, but at that point in our thought process, those buildings would never fall. They might burn out the interior of them, but they would never fall. And unfortunately, we were watching TV when one of the towers fell. And we knew instantaneously that there were a lot of deaths, and a lot of them were firefighters. And so just for you younger guys that weren't there, it was a very life-changing thing, I think, for us. What I miss that togetherness of the country after that event. We really didn't have big political fights back then. It was all hands on deck to go find out who did this, why they did this, and go get them. And thank God that was successful. I served in peacetime, and I served in the fire service, and I remember. And Trevor and I have had the opportunity to teach with and around, to be taught by guys from FDNY, because we're just geographically close to them, and they're very open and willing to come out and teach tricks of the trade. And all of them knew people very well, all the new people. And the other thing that I think we got to give credit to, not only the military, but those guys in FDNY stayed. They stayed fighting fires in that city, and they knew the rest of their careers that city was a target. And you know what? They brought their bunker gear in every shift, and they went right back to work and did their thing again and again and again. So I also salute those guys in FDNY that kept coming back to work, and they kept doing their thing and helped us in the fire service, teaching us things, on the firefighting side. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about your thoughts about Set There Alone, my friend.
Yeah, like you guys echo a lot of your sentiments. I think it truly was a touchstone moment for our generation. Like Trevor pointed out, my grandparents, they knew exactly where they were and what they were doing when Pearl Harbor was hit. My parents knew exactly where they were and what they were doing when JFK was shot. And for us, it's 9/11. I was walking out the back door of Station 7. I had just gotten off shift. My phone rang. My wife said that a plane had hit the tower. Just like you guys, I was thinking, some idiot in a Cessna. So I run upstairs. The guys were watching Sports Center. I changed the channel. I got called a whole bunch of names for interrupting what they were watching until they saw what I had turned it to. We stood there, like I said, saw that hole, said that's no Cessna. We watched the second plane hit. I would say the majority of the crew that day, and myself being veterans, we all looked at each other immediately and said, this is terrorism. This is not an accident. We knew bad things were happening right then. Stayed there and watched with the guys a little bit. I drove home, got home with my wife just in time to see the first tower come down. And I broke up a little bit then. About 2 maybe 3 years before that, I had turned down a job offer from FDNY. Had a kid on the way, couldn't afford to take the pay cut and all that, so I turned it down. But that really, really struck home right then that, it very easily could have been me there. And there was no question in my mind that in addition to civilians going down in that tower, that there were firefighters. I think the most chilling sound, and I remember teaching at fire academies for years afterwards, ripping guys anytime they let their pass devices go off, because every time I heard that, it was just that chorus of pass devices we heard later in the day on 9/11 and 9/12 and all that when they were digging the pile, and that's all you could hear was all those pass devices going off. I think that's the one thing that truly sticks in my head is that sound. Anytime I hear one, I see those images. So, yeah, it's, like you said, we got guys coming on now that either weren't born or were just babies at the time and don't understand it. And Trevor and I were just talking over the last couple of days about passing on that institutional knowledge, the things that we know, the things that we've learned, how so often the fire service doesn't pass on that stuff. The generation that experiences it, learns it, knows it, lives it, but we do a poor job of passing it on. And like Trevor said, 9/11 is one thing we can't fail to pass on. We've got to break that chain and make sure all these young guys understand the significance of it. Like you said, I haven't seen any that are disrespectful to it. But my wife just this morning said that, or this evening when she got home from work, said that a young girl that's in her maybe 20s, so probably an infant at the time, she said, "Oh, yeah, I've got a real bad 9/11 joke." And my wife, to her credit, didn't just drop her like a bad habit, but said, "Don't even think about it." And I mean, this is a good kid that she works with. Just not being exposed to the fire service and not having lived through it, I don't think she really gets what it was, what that means to the fire service and the nation that day. So I think like Trevor said, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we pass this and all the other lessons on.
And to that end, Scott, thank you for sharing all that with us. And Ben, you're kind of within our group here. You're always that bridge guy because you're too old to be young and you're too young to be old. So I kind of envy you, to be quite honest with you. But what was your experience with it? And then coming up in the fire service, seeing both the people who are senior to you and very junior to you at this point, especially not only as a career firefighter, paramedic, but as an officer in a volunteer department. How do you process this, and how do you try to get them to see it through your lens?
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate in that like you said, I'm kind of like in the middle. Like I didn't have a lot of time in the fire service prior to it. And now I've got, more time after it. Like we've said, it's one of those days that you'll never forget. I was in college. It was my first year in college, and I was actually sitting in a world politics class, and the professor comes in and says, apparently there's a plane that struck the World Trade Center. We're not real sure what's going on. And we went on with class. I don't remember what we were talking about, but we had our regular class. And after class, I go back to my dorm room and didn't have a TV in there. And I went up to a friend's room and they had one. And I will never forget watching the second plane hit. And at this point, it was all past. Everything had already happened. So watching the replay and the plane banking and going behind the tower. And I remember thinking, where the hell did it go? And it wasn't until they turned it around and you saw the view from the other side where the plane struck the tower, and then it hit me. It was like, holy shit. And like Bobby said, and Trevor, you'll never forget. It was a beautiful day. Beautiful day. I walked out of a class later that afternoon, and there's no way that could have happened. Come back, get on the computer, and it's like, holy shit. And from that day on, it's been one of those things that, we say we never forget. And it's something that you think about every day. It's something that you, when you go to work, even in my previous career as an athletic trainer, I knew in September, it's a busy time for us in high school athletics. And there was always that week leading up to 9/11 where something like it just wasn't right. I was off, like the evaluations, the patient care, that kind of stuff, that never changed. But I wasn't at school. I think I always spent more time at the firehouse that week. But having that, kind of, I don't want to say it kind of catapulted me into the fire service, because I was definitely interested and I was definitely a part of it prior to that. But it made it that much more important, to watch those, to watch the videos and watch the documentaries that have come out since about the members that the FDNY lost that day and that they're still losing. It hurts every time. I'll never forget, we had, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too, but there was a video that was going around that was recorded by a court clerk, I think a Queens court clerk, and kind of walking the streets. And like Scott mentioned, the pass devices, like you hear chirping in the background the whole time. And you're like, if you don't know what it is, like, you're like, oh, there's something wrong with the camcorder. There's this, it's whatever. But those that know, like, never forget that. And now that the pass device has changed, it's not the same sound. Like, you still don't forget what that sound is, and even with the new alerts that we have, like, it's still tough, nobody likes to hear that sound to begin with. But now it has more meaning when you hear it. So it was, I would say, like I said, it catapulted me, I think, into the fire service, and it made everything that I was a part of more meaningful after that.
And Ben, I want to swing back to one of Bobby's comments when he talked about the FDNY folks. They were doing their thing. They were going up in that building. And one of the things I think that we can impress on some of the people who are younger in the fire service is that's what makes us. That's what builds us. That's what gives us that credibility within the community. Is that whether it's a 110-story building or a 900 square foot private dwelling, we're coming to work. And we're people like everybody else, just like the folks working on that day. Up in New York, they probably came to work that morning, not knowing what they're going to get into, but they went through their regular routine. They had plans that night, that following weekend, whatever the case is. Some of them were having probably problems at home or, personal issues, like we all do, but we report to work and we do the job. And I think, all of us will always remember the sights, sounds, and smells, whether it was, the fighter jets screaming down the coast of Ocean City. I'm not sure where they're coming from, Dover or Patuxent Naval Air Station or Virginia Beach, wherever, but things like that. Or when we go up to just the countless funerals up in New York, because besides our colleagues and the people that we knew that we went to their funerals, we had so many people from our region that would go up there just to relieve the FDNY folks, because they were just overwhelmed. Because think about that, the amount of funerals they'd have to go to, not only for their own company, their department, and the smell at the Trade Center site, and seeing the pile and talking to some of the firefighters up there, and being present at that site to say you'll never forget those the good things, but you'll never forget the bad things either. They're kind of indelibly inked. But I did want to capitalize on that comment that Bobby had made, that they still went to work. That was not a usual day. That wasn't. I know we say we call that Tuesday. It was a Tuesday, but nevertheless, that wasn't a usual thing. In our fire service mindset, high rises didn't collapse before that day. We established collapse zones and talked about ventilation at high rises and things falling from the building, but typically it was window glass and not people. With that being said, I think that there's a good lessons and a lot of hard lessons that we can pass along, but a lot of that too is just it doesn't have to be a major life-changing national, worldwide, global event, we kind of employ these same strategies and these same mindsets to our everyday work at the fire station. And I think that's really where we can impress upon some of these folks that's where they need to take it. And God forbid they ever experience something like that in their lifetime. We hope they don't. But should they understand the qualities that we're expecting out of a firefighter. So with that, Bobby, I really appreciate you bringing up that point, because I think that was very well stated.
Well, I don't want to minimize this part of the conversation, but that 9/11 is something that we will remember forever. The 343 brothers and sisters that we lost that day, and that the over 200 that we continue to lose through everything after that. Let's talk about some good stuff that just came out from the FDNY. Retired Lieutenant Ray McCormack. If anybody's seen any pictures of him recently, he kind of looks like Santa Claus. Holy cow!
That's his new side hustle. He's Santa. He's going to be Santa Claus's stunt double.
I don't know. I see bad Santa considering it's Ray, but it's just me.
But one of the last projects that he worked on prior to his retirement was revising and revamping the FDNY's engine company manual. So recently that's been published for public use and public review. If you guys want to see that, it's on the Strike the Box website. So stbtraining.com. It's on our homepage. Go check it out. It's, what is it, Bobby? 255 pages. We printed it off the other day.
It's enough. I might get a day off of work for printing it all there.
Well, if you do, let me know. I'll take half that day too. But go check that out. It's, the comment that I put on our website about it, and we'll talk about FDNY versus East Alshit, New Hampshire, and nothing against New Hampshire communities. But the difference between the FDNY and the local community, all volunteer departments, it's a big difference. Not everybody is riding out with 4 or 5 people on an engine, 6 people on a truck, having, 100 people show up within the first 10 minutes and you can literally stomp out the fire. It's one of the busiest departments in the world. So they probably see a thing or two that, and do a thing or two that, can help any department. So go check it out. Bobby, or have you guys had a chance to look at that document at all?
Yeah, I did. It's very good. It's laid out very well. It breaks down hose loads and packs and things like that. It's actually very, very good. It's good reading. So I think people would enjoy it, and it kind of can give you some insight if you're going to do some drills in your firehouses and stuff to kind of see exactly what's going on up there. Another thing that happened long before September 11th was we didn't share information like that in the past. The ability for you to click on and see an operating manual in FDNY did not exist 20 years ago. So we all have the fortunate to be able to do that now. So certainly just click on it, read through it. It's a PDF file, I think,
Yeah.
And read through it, and it's laid out well too, so you can figure out if you're going to look for something. It's kind of easy to find what you want to get there.
And Bobby, that's another great point. As besides the fact that we kind of came together for a while as a country, and of course things have become much more polarized since then, but a lot of the partisanship just went out the window, and it was all about the focus of us as a nation. And also, we kind of did a good gut check of our fire service too, because if you think about it, we were a people divided by a common language. We had our silo over here, and if we liked your department, we would work with you on mutual aid. But if you pissed us off the week before, well, you're out, this other department's in, and we had a very linear thought process. And with that, you remember from Ben, you were in Wicomico County as a volunteer, working in Ocean City. We were in Worcester County, and then you have Sussex, where Bobby served as a volunteer as well. We were using 10 codes back then, and each one of our counties had different meanings to different 10 codes. And so that was one thing where we did a lot of learning, and we were able to kind of network more as a fire service versus having the us and them mentality. We also learned to work with our partners in law enforcement, in DOD, and all these other areas, emergency management, hazmat, because before, again, it was more of an us and them kind of mentality. And one thing I did want to bring up as well, we talk about, Bobby and Scott, again, thank you all for your services as military veterans for our country. But we have folks that still serve while doing our job as firefighters and paramedics. I saw Chief Black was on a little while ago. Obviously with military background, and not only that, but I remember when we got deployed down to Hurricane Katrina and sharing a ride back with them on a transport plane. The last person in the world I expected to see. But we look at people like that, or people even from our own state, like Chris Slutman, who I believe was killed in 2019. He started out in Maryland, was up there, I believe, in Kentland 33, was on Ladder Company 27 in FDNY, and was over in Afghanistan and lost his life over there. So we still have a lot of our folks who are either still in military reserves and National Guard, and it's just amazing to see that. Not only that networking, but an overlap that we have in so many different areas of our service. And again, I think that just speaks to the willingness for these people to go and serve, not only in their home communities, but serving their country at so many different levels. So you definitely want to thank all those people who have made that sacrifice and spent the time away from home, and those who didn't have the opportunity to come home for doing what they've done. So to that end, Ben, I know you wanted to get into a little bit of a discussion. I got some questions for Scott there. He's a little bit difficult to see. I want to kind of pivot a little bit. Again, I've known Scott for many, 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 many years. Met out at FDIC, and we could tell those stories on another broadcast. But Scott, you're a little bit difficult to see with the backlighting. You're out there in Colorado, so it's a beautiful backdrop. I call that the Kevin Costner backdrop. So it's probably not real. He's probably in a 1-bedroom apartment with no windows. And that's the backdrop. But Ben, could you do me a favor for those who are kind of curious as to what Scott really looks like? If you don't mind putting that up for me.
Yeah.
Because I tease him about this.
This can't be good.
Oh, it's not. It's going to be a train wreck for you. So.
Yeah, hang on. It's been a while since we've done this.
Okay, well, I'll keep busting Scott while you're working on the AV stuff there. But here, yeah. So I always said Scott looked like a not quite as skinny as a Freddie Mercury. So that's with the short hair. So.
Well, there's FCC rules, so I can't respond appropriately. But
I love you too, man. Love you too, brother. So with that, Ben was talking about with your pre-show a little bit and pre-show. We took a little hiatus over the summer, give everybody a little bit of a break. And now that we're getting ready to get into Labor Day weekend, I know for different areas of the country, things are different for the seasons. And the seasonality of Ocean City is we kind of ramp up in the spring, crazy all summer. The last big hurrah is this upcoming weekend. And then there's the peaks and valleys after that, and it kind of dies off again. But it's become more and more of a year-round resort. And I was talking to somebody a firefighter from South Carolina today, and they're very far inland. And to them, whether it's January or July, it's kind of the same routine. They don't have any influx. And to me, that was really weird, even growing up in it, because your school schedule was based around tourist season. Everything was based around it. So, Scott, how are things the same and different out there in Colorado? Because I know you have different times a year where people come out there to enjoy all your natural resources and do stuff. But what's a typical summer for you like? Because I do not see any ocean in your background there. So I'm just kind of curious what it's like out there in the mountains.
No, there isn't much of an ocean out here. And, we're being suburban where we are. We don't have a whole lot of change in our demographic seasonally. The mountain towns, certainly they get influx. They'll get a big influx in the summer, and then it'll kind of die down, and they'll get another big influx in the winter for skiing and that sort of stuff. But where we're at, it doesn't change much. The only thing that'll ramp up is anywhere from probably April to May on through probably November, we get into the wildland season. So I don't know how good the picture is behind me there, but if you can see, my pasture there is pretty dry at the moment. Well, it was until about an hour ago. It's been raining since then. But before that, it's been getting pretty dry. So this year we haven't had any big fires in state as yet, whereas last week, for anybody that watches the national stuff or pays attention to the wildland realm, we had the Cameron Peak fire was probably the biggest we had in Colorado, and then there were some other ones. I got to go up there for a couple of 2-week stints. I just got back about 3 weeks ago from a 2-week stint up in Wyoming. I wasn't actually assigned to a fire. We joke around and basically we were up there to make sure that the Forest Service guys got some vacation. So we were covering one of their areas, probably a couple hundred square miles. We were covering up around the Medicine Bow National Forest, basically. So we were on a small Type 6, so a brush rig for you guys, just 3 people. And then we had a chief and a chase rig just in his ride. And we were just cruising around, watching for any starts. We had a couple of small lightning starts, but nothing real significant that we dealt with. But we've had crews out. We've got one additional brush trucker Type 6 in our station that does nothing but deploy to wildland fires. And it went out the last week of June, and it hasn't been in quarters more than 2 days since then until this week. It's just getting some repairs done, some upgrades, and it'll probably go back on the board next week. And I would bet it'll be out the door within 2 days of going on the board.
And it's kind of wild because I know you have a ton of wildland urban interface out there where, Ocean City, what's our biggest wildland urban interface? I think it's that little patch of trees behind the 94th Street Mall. But one of the things I've asked you before, Scott, and I'm actually going to ask you for the benefit of one of our viewers, Brother Mike Hickman, that we worked with in Ocean City. I know there really is a South Park, Colorado. And,
yes, there is.
And Can you talk about that for a second? How close is it to the cartoon? Because I've got to ask this for Brother Hickman, and he'll appreciate your response.
Some of the downtown shots, it doesn't look that dissimilar. It is an older mountain town. It's kind of a cool little place. Funny story, I actually went through paramedic school in '98 with 2 guys from South Park, and they said at opposite ends of their ramp, they had signs that said South Park Ambulance. And they said that was probably the biggest line item in their budget was to replace those signs because they got stolen on an almost daily basis.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Hickman has ever been to South Park, Colorado, but we need to check his garage and his bar out back of his house to see if there's a South Park Ambulance sign up there. But so now, and I'm sure they get tired of hearing the South Park jokes, but I asked Scott, I'm like, dude, is there really a South Park? And he's like, yes, there's a South Park. And then regaled me with the story. So,
yeah, I think that's actually where the 2 guys are from, or at least they spent some time there to just play off that. And, I'd say some of the characters are probably typecast after people in town. You can see that stereotype that lives up there in some of them. So.
Well, I just want to come out there and go hunting with Ned and Jim Bob. Those are the 2 I want.
Well, I don't know about those 2, but the invitation's always open to come out and do some hunting with me. So,
okay, well, challenge accepted. Don't threaten us with a good time. But that's what's kind of different. I'll get because obviously I've been removed from it for a little while, but when Memorial Day weekend would come around, it was like welcome to the freak show. Here we go. It's just going to be heads down. So, how, from a professional and personal standpoint, how are you guys this summer? Would you get any leave time, get a chance to kick back and relax? And I know there was a couple of crazy calls that made national news from Ocean City, but there were probably, several others that didn't. So how did you guys fare this summer in the, the high on-ramp, off-ramp world that you guys live in up there?
Well, we've had some good, we call them cutters, but some good entrapments. We've got a couple of highways running through our district. So we've had a couple of pretty significant extrications, some stuff like that. Haven't had a whole lot in the way of fires this year, but been running, like I said, our brush truck's been out. So that being a small single station department, we've got 6 people on per day. So total of 18 full timers. So when we deploy 3 or even 4 of them on a wildland, that puts a serious crimp in our staffing model. So a lot of overtime. Guys have been really working a lot of that stuff lately. I would say that's really the biggest stuff we've had going on this year. Not a lot of other significant events, but just that just kind of steady. We've had an uptick. Our call volume actually went down a little bit last year with COVID and everybody locked down. People just weren't getting out as much and doing as much, and that has definitely reversed. We're on pace to be probably the busiest year in our history this year. So we're definitely picking up on our call volume. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We've had some protocol changes recently as far as the EMS side of things. Some of that you guys may have seen. It made the national news. Not that far north of us, some Aurora paramedics got in trouble with some police officers related to some medication administration that may or may not have been appropriate. And, it's definitely that went right to the state, considering we've got pretty much one party rule out here that went straight up to the governor, and they changed all of our protocols. So we lost some pretty good tools out of that, unfortunately. But, as the fire service does, we'll adapt and overcome.
Absolutely. How about you, Ben and Bobby? How was your summers?
Go ahead, Bobby.
It's sad to say because I'm a firefighter, but I'm going to say this. Last year was very weird for me because the lockdown severely affected us at work. Though we did have lots of COVID cases in the wintertime, overall our call volume was a lot lower. This year has been unhinged and back to what I would call maybe above our normal crazy calls. But, as a firefighter, I like the challenge of going to calls again. So we definitely had a slowdown. So we've had a pretty busy summer for us. And it's been a lot. We had a little bit of heavy surf up here. Unfortunately, we had some drownings and things like that. We did have the Route 90 bridge incident that everyone talked about. We had a gentleman that jumped off a 30-foot bridge into 4 foot of water and rescued a baby, which is a very, very cool thing. But Jonathan Bowers, the guy that was the hero in that thing, not really the fire department. We did respond and do that. But we had that going on. We're gearing up for the fall. Trevor, were you up here? Did you have H2OI when you were up here at all? So we have little import cars that comes in and they kind of challenge the police department and lots of violence and stuff like that. Hopefully it's not as bad this year, but they're ramping up like it's going to be. We have Bike Week coming in town. They're predicting that our Bike Week is going to be the largest Bike Week they've ever had because people are trying to get out, And so we've been busy and exciting. As it was when you left, Trevor, our shoulder seasons are getting busier and busier and busier all the time. I live up here in Delaware, and the construction up here is probably rivals what the 1990s Atlanta growth was. It's just insane. They're just building tens of thousands of houses and people working online, so they're actually moving into our area. So our population has gone through the roof. Not in Ocean City because it's pretty much built out. Like Trevor said, there's not any land left to build in Ocean City. So unless you tear something down, you're not building anything else. But it's trickling into us at probably 15 or 20% a year of people that come into Ocean City for day trips and stuff from Delaware and things like that. So I like being busy. So for me, it's been a good thing. It got me doing things and running calls again. I love that. I don't like to see bad things happen to people, but I do like running calls and making a difference. So it's been a fun summer. What do you think about your first summer there, a rookie?
It's been good. So prior to going full time for Ocean City, I was, really just on fire-based EMS. So if we would go on a medical assist or have something like that, I was coming off the engine to do ALS skills and provide patient care. So I really wasn't on the ambulance a whole lot. But with coming to Ocean City full time, it has been a change, and back on the unit, back on the medic unit full time. And it's amazing how fast that stuff comes back. I think me probably being a little bit more critical of myself. There's a lot of stuff that I need to work on to get back up to where I want to be. But it is definitely something that I've missed. Like Bobby said, running the calls, being busy. So it's nice coming back. It's nice to be busy. So yeah, I've been enjoying it. I started an IV on a lady the other day. It was probably a month ago now.
Hey Ben, this is a fire show, but go ahead.
You know I can make you disappear, right?
I know.
Okay. But started an IV on a lady the other day and told her, I said, would you be surprised if I told you this was the first time I've ever done that? And she said, no, it's not. I looked up at my partner. I said, first time in 2 years, maybe. So, but no, it's nice to be back. It's fun. In my hiatus, I definitely missed the people of Ocean City. So it's great to be back and see those folks. I'm excited for the outsider work stuff as well. It's a different schedule that I am working now. So working that 24 hours and then having the 3 days off is great to be home, get stuff done around the house and spend more time with my family that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm exceptionally grateful for the opportunity to come to Ocean City and to be back in the swing of things.
Hey Ben, does Ocean City still have that paramedic exchange program with the Australian government?
I think that's going to be coming back in about another 11 months or so.
As soon as you're off probation?
Yes.
Yeah. You might want to tell some of the folks that might not be familiar with that, because I've got a bunch of things I can say on that topic. But
we're going to hold off on that.
Go ahead with it.
No, we're gonna hold off on that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well played, sir. Well played.
So we're coming up on an hour. We're at about 50 minutes. One of the other things that we wanted to touch on tonight was, and I think we kind of talked about it when we were talking about 9/11, is the coordination between agencies and talking about the interoperability and all working together. And I know some of the folks, I know Trevor went down. I don't know about Bobby or Scott, but 16 years ago, earlier this week was the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Happened to be the same time that Hurricane Ida, which was I think it was a Category 4 hurricane, which is a little bit larger than what Hurricane Katrina was, made landfall around the same area where Katrina did. Luckily, that area, they took the lessons that they learned from Katrina, reinforced their levees, had some other infrastructure that was put up and to protect them a little bit better. So I don't know that the devastation was quite as bad. But let's talk about the incidents and the everything with Katrina, and then how that helped expand and help that interoperability.
Sure. I had the opportunity to be deployed down there with the city, and for quite a while. We were part of the Maryland task force that was assigned down there in Operation Lifeline, and lots of experience, lots of stories to tell, lots of lessons learned. But some things even more so than what you learn from a fire department or public safety organization perspective, you learn from a personal perspective, because in the Mid-Atlantic, we're not immune to hurricanes in any way, shape, or form. I mean, and especially Northeast storms for us are sometimes just as devastating, if not more so, because they last for so long. But I recall, getting within 250 miles of New Orleans, and there weren't signs. There was debris. There were no street signs. So it's not like you can say, oh, let's look for exit 25, because there's no sign that says exit 25. And GPS wasn't as sophisticated as it is today, obviously. So you look at some of those things like GIS mapping, even in your own department, or taking something as simple as a stencil on the curb by your house, because your siding might be gone, your address board on your house or the stickers might be gone, but something more permanent. And that was a big deal that came about as well. I know down where I work in the Department of South Florida, we have the concrete posts that you see everywhere. So they withstand the weather a lot more and the flooding. But at the same time, the GIS mapping has really become something important for us through our county IT and locally, that if we need to bring resources in, if I need Bobby and Ben and Scott, and you guys are from all different areas of the country, I can give you a coordinates of where my fire station is versus trying to give you roadmap directions, if you will. So those are some really, besides being able to do multi-level coordination and, also be able to talk, again, in the same language and work with all these different agencies, is really the lessons you look at and say, all right, we're reliant on ourselves, and we come for it to be at least self-sufficient for those first 3 days. And there was a lot of criticism of the FEMA response, and there was a lot of praise to it. And I tell the story of 4 houses where there was 4 kind of like what we call like the shotgun style houses down that way, and one right next to the other. And the first one, there's a guy with a big plywood sign that's been spray painted that says, "Need help," and had all these expletives on it, and he's literally sitting out on his front stoop with devastation, drinking a 40 ounce. He just kind of said, "Hell with it. When help gets here, it gets here." And then next door to that, you have a gentleman who is disabled in a wheelchair who's trying to clean up his yard and get back to some sense of normalcy. And next door to that house was his neighbor who was coming over to help him first, and then take care of his stuff. And then you had the 4th house, which they looked like the hurricane barely hit them because they had just been very self-sufficient and taking care of themselves. So just 4 houses in a neighborhood side by side had 4 very different internal and personal responses to their own devastation and tragedy. And just like we see today, in a lot of things that are polarized, there were some things that we would see on little snippets of information that we could get that were very, very different than what we were experiencing on the ground there. So a lot of things would get sensationalized, a lot of things getting reported back for whatever purposes on at every end of the spectrum. And it always tickles me when you see the newscaster talking about the massive flooding, which there was, but he said, "Oh, I'm standing here in the flooding," and then you watch. He's talking about people, he's sitting in a canoe, talking about flooding, and there's someone walking in ankle deep water behind him. It's like, dude, come on, let's just stop the hysteria and get to helping these people and getting them the information they need. But I mean, Ben, I think that looking at that from an anniversary perspective, it also made communities a little more self-sufficient, because it takes time to mobilize things. No matter how good or efficient or well prepared you are, it takes time to get people and resources down on the ground. And of course, we drove down there, but now you'll hear FEMA say the first 72 is on you, and there's much more of a push in the community I'm serving in. We just put in a community emergency supply cache to bridge that gap, because we have a lot of older residents who might not have the food and water and everything else stored if they choose not to evacuate, but also because of some physical limitations, they're not able to host cases of water and all these different things. So we actually have a shipping container that's been designated and secured that we could have 500 cases of water immediately available, so many cases of MREs, other supplies, charging cords that can go into generators for people's cell phones. So that way we're not sitting there, banging our fist on the table saying, where's the federal government? Where's the state government? Where's the county government? When it gets to us, it gets to us. But we saw this with the COVID vaccines. They were trying to roll that out, and good, bad, or indifferent. But then there was a lot of communities that were identified as being underserved that they said, well, look, these people don't have a pharmacy within several miles of their house. It's not like they can walk down to the Rite Aid or the CVS or the Publix or Walgreens and get a vaccine. So there were some things that were moved from here and taken over there. And of course, people get upset over that and say, well, hold on, why are you taking it away from us? And it's kind of hard sometimes to convince people when you've got 3 cars in your driveway, and you're living in a 2,600 square foot house minimum, and all these things that you have all the conveniences within walking distance, that you're an underserved community. So that's where we have to say, look, let's not get into the cat fights over all this. Let's be able to be self-sufficient as individuals, as neighborhoods, as communities. And then when the resources come in to backfill that, then that's great. But don't sit there and throw your hands up in the air. And And that's what we did see when we went down to the New Orleans area. There were some people who would embrace us right away and say, "Oh, thank God you're here. Thank you for coming down to help." And there's other people that were irately pissed and saying, because we quote unquote represented a government, what took you so long? How come you haven't been to this neighborhood before? Why? And we just went to where we were told to go. We had no choice in the matter. So, I think those are all good lessons learned. We're still going to have natural disasters, whether it's in the middle of the country or, in mountain time, or whether it's on the East Coast, West Coast, wherever it might be. So, the big thing is the self-sufficiency and taking the lessons learned out of stuff. So with that, Ben, I know we're kind of getting to the witching hour. I don't know if you're going to send it around the horn again or we're going to stop here, but I'm going to pitch it over to I'll pitch it back to you, Ben, and you can take it from here.
All right. Yeah. So we're at the hour. So let's wrap this up. And whatever final pearls from, anything, the topics that we've talked about tonight, or anything in general that you want to share with. Currently have 3 people watching, but that we want to share with those folks before we head out tonight. We'll go ahead and get going with that. Bobby, you want to lead us off? Bobby always has some good pearls.
Oh, he does.
Fall's coming up, and the holiday season's coming up. I hope everybody stays safe. I hope everybody enjoys their family and gets out and sees people for all the lockdown we had. I wasn't trying to ignore you, Scott. I was using this spray. It's for something on the East Coast we call bugs. You don't see them up there, so we have to use this every now and then. But thanks for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. Love the backdrop. I just was out in Colorado Springs a little while ago, and unfortunately for a memorial, my wife's family's from out there. What a beautiful area of the country. My God, I had no idea. My sister lives in Buena Vista, but it was a different kind of beautiful out there in that area. You really are living part of God's country out there. So you stay safe out there, my friend, and thanks for coming on the show. And you want to wrap up and give us your last nuggets?
Sure. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you inviting me on. It's been good talking with all of you. Yeah, we're talking about the self-sufficiency and all that. If a hurricane hits out here, y'all better get to church or something, because really bad things are happening. But we've got the wildland side of it. Trevor says 3 miles away to the Walgreens. Well, the nearest grocery store for me is 12 miles, and that's the first 8 of it's dirt. So, it's definitely a different little mindset, like you said. I definitely enjoy it out here. I loved growing up back east, but it is God's country out here. So we've just got a little bit of different set of problems here. We're definitely, I wouldn't say this is an urban interface, but we're definitely in the wildland realm where I'm sitting at. And we've got that wildland urban all around us. So a little bit of different problem, but a lot of the same kind of aspects, that self-sufficiency. We go up on these wildland fires, we see the same stuff. One guy's out there, he's been wetting down his lawn, and, his house is good. He's got that defensible space. And then you've got other ones that, like you said, they got this big sign. They're just out there waiting for somebody to come help them because they have no idea how to do it themselves. So you get a little bit of everything. And the faces change. We've heard it at FDIC, same circus, different clowns. And they apply it to us. But you know what? It happens to the communities as well. We all have the same community, just a little different spin on it.
Thanks, Scott. Trevor?
All right. Definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether it's live or I know a lot of folks look at this later on. And thank all of you for being here tonight. It's good to see everybody's faces and get to chat and catch up a little bit. Scott, you especially, it's great to be able to catch up with you. And it's always nice to get perspectives from different areas of the country, too, because we chew a lot of the same dirt. We have a lot of the same issues and problems and challenges, but then there's some things that are very unique. And it's nice to be able to look through someone else's lens and just get a fresh perspective on stuff. So, Scott, stay safe out there and, enjoy that beautiful backdrop that you're in. And I'm hoping that when you get that barn put up and the clandestine brewery established there, maybe we'll have to come out and check it out for you. But Thank you, everybody. And again, have a very, very safe Labor Day weekend. Enjoy it with your family, your friends, your loved ones. And, when 9/11 comes out, maybe reach out to some of these other folks because, a lot of things kind of get stirred up again. And it might be a good opportunity just to, reach out and let everybody know you're thinking about them. So with that, Ben, thanks for coordinating this, and I'll kick it off to you.
Thanks, sir. Again, thanks, everybody, for joining us. Scott, it was nice to meet you. Hope we have you back soon.
Sounds good.
As we wrap up, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So that is September. Was that 16th? I think. Watch the website. Watch the Facebook. All the social media stuff. This is going to go online as a podcast tomorrow. So if you missed tonight, you always have the ability to go back and listen to it later. So again, check our social media for that. One of the things that we kind of talked about throughout the show tonight was having that self-sufficiency. So, as you're getting ready to go to work tomorrow, or you're at work now, for every shift, for whatever you're doing, make sure that you're making yourself more self-sufficient. So you're not a liability for your brothers, your partners, whoever you're working with. You make yourself harder to kill, and then it makes you better for your partners too. So try and keep that in the back of your mind. Try and do something to make yourself better every day. Before we finally click off here, cheers, guys, one last time. And we're going to hold them up for a second. We're going to hold them up for the 13 members of the military that were killed in Afghanistan this past week. May they rest in peace, and we hopefully we don't see them soon, but that their families get some comfort from that. So, cheers! Everybody have a great night. Stay safe.